Story 1. My dog had a bump on his side for 2 years. The veterinarian had examined it multiple times and said it was not a problem. One night, the bump seemed to bother my dog, and he wanted me to scratch or massage it. He kept presenting it to me. It was just a lump under his skin, and I had been touching it when I petted him for 2 years with no issue. So I obliged and gently pressed on it while petting him. I guess it was a cyst because it exploded. High-pressure brown and white chunks flew into my face, some into my mouth, all over my beard, down my arm, and on my shirt. The smell will haunt my dreams, and very few people can say this, but the taste was worse. It became a permanent memory. It will be my last thought before I die. The shower I immediately took was not enough. The dog was not hurt and was, in fact, extremely relieved. We brought him to the veterinarian the next day, who started antibiotics, but that was all. The cyst did not recur, and the dog lived for years after that. Story 2. I discovered that I was allergic to magic mushrooms. I ate a tiny piece. Not long after, I projectile vomited while lying in bed. It went straight up in the air, landing on my face. My boyfriend turned me onto my side just as liquid started coming out of every orifice. After it stopped, my boyfriend helped me into the shower because I could barely walk. Luckily, there was a shower seat. He changed the sheets and cleaned up as best he could. He later asked me to never eat tuna again because he could smell my lunch everywhere. He is a keeper. However, we decided never to touch medicinal mushrooms again. Story 3. I was in a hotel room with friends in New York City. Just got out of the shower and was in a towel when both my friends came into the bathroom to get ready for bed. I had to pass gas and thought it would be funny, so I pushed it out pretty hard and ended up accidentally soiling the bathroom floor. My friends were both mortified but laughing so hard they had tears streaming down their faces. I had them swear never to tell a soul, and to this day, I'm pretty sure it's between the three of us. I am a woman, by the way. Story 4. As a home health nurse, I was once asked to empty the bedside commode before I left. Sure, no problem. When I lifted the lid, it was full to the brim with urine and feces liquid, almost like a 5-gallon bucket filled to the top. I braced myself for the weight, but when I lifted it, it was so heavy that it slipped and toppled over. The bathroom floor had an inch of urine and feces standing on it, which I was also standing on. I walked out, told them they had a mess to clean up, and left. I never looked back. It was a 30-minute drive home. Story 5. Green bile, like bright grass green, was shooting out of both ends of me at the same time. I also vomited green bile onto a cute little blonde nurse while she was inserting a nasogastric tube down my throat. It got on her face. Story 6. In my senior year of high school, I had diarrhea right before chemistry class. I noticed an unpleasant smell during class and realized it was coming from me. I went to the front office and called my mother to pick me up. The next day, I found out that other people could smell it too. I knew it was me. Story 7. I saw my intoxicated neighbor struggling to walk home. It looked like he was going to fall flat on his face, so I offered him a ride. A short time later, I noticed a horrible smell coming from him. When he got out of my car, I could still smell it, so I started to investigate. That's when I noticed a mushy puddle of feces in my passenger seat. It had penetrated the jeans he was wearing. The saying holds true: no good deed goes unpunished. Story 8. I was asleep in bed and woke to the sound of my cat retching. Before I could move, he vomited on my leg. In the puddle of hot cat vomit was a live roundworm, about 8 inches long. Story 9. I used to be the information technology manager for a medium-sized broadcast facility. One weekend, I was at my friend's place for a Cinco de Mayo barbecue. I was just starting to put some food on a plate when I received an email, then a text, followed by about 12 more of each, and then an actual phone call. There was no internet. There was no network connection back to the main office or to our sister facility. The entire network seemed to be down. I drove home, opened my laptop, and connected remotely. I had a special way to remote in through a backdoor that corporate did not know about. I used a virtual private network to connect to our sister facility, then accessed a console server in our machine room from there. If it connected, I knew the internet was up and there was some other problem. If it did not connect, the network was truly down. We had 3 network pipes, a large optical connection between us and our sister facility, another enterprise-grade connection to the main office, and regular internet like any other place. The connection did not go through. I started tracing the breakdown. It was reaching the first step, but everything beyond that was unreachable. I had to go in on a Saturday on Cinco de Mayo. When I arrived, I checked the network from the inside. Everything worked up to the router. The internal network was functioning well. Wi-Fi was working but could not access outside the building. I decided to reboot the routers, considering there might have been a power surge. I went to the main distribution frame in the parking garage. When I opened the door, the room was flooded with brown liquid and mist. It smelled terrible. Workers in the suite above the parking garage had hit the sewer main. Sewage had leaked directly into the main distribution frame closet. All of our network hardware was drenched in waste. The network equipment for 2 other businesses was affected as well. The issue was not over. I had to manage this problem until it was resolved. Our broadcast was still going out, but without the network, the text overlays on screen did not populate from the offsite databases. We also lost the confidence feed from the cable company. I had to push 3 different internet providers until 10 p.m. I kept asking to speak to the manager's supervisors, telling them, "We are the same company. Fix it now. Assign blame later." Throughout the ordeal, I was standing next to a large closet full of sewage water. I did not even eat dinner that night. Story 10. My female cat was in heat and very affectionate. She kept rubbing against me and secreted some liquid from her vagina onto my arm. I decided to smell it and found it unpleasant. Story 11. I had to go to the emergency room one night, and they kept me for observation for a few hours. They put in a catheter, and when they tried to remove it, it got stuck. Several nurses, a doctor, a urologist, and even the janitor all tried to remove it. I had many hands touching and tugging me down there, and I was mortified. Story 12. Making love with her on top, and she vomited on me. Drunk on wine and too much motion, I guess. Anyway, talk about a mood killer. Story 13. My neighbor's trash can fell over in a storm one night. So, being a good neighbor, I went and picked it up. I used the lid to scoop the trash back in before lifting it. Once I lifted it and closed the top, I felt something wet on my hand. It was her bloody used tampon. Story 14. I was holding my baby while lying back on the couch. He vomited in my mouth. Warm breast milk. I almost vomited writing this. Story 15. I have been dating someone for about a month. They came across as a very normal person. I worked a lot, so it took a month before we actually got down to business, so to speak. The first time they spent the night, they asked me if they could squat over my face and defecate on it. They left quickly. Story 16. Maybe not the worst, but it has got to be up there. My housemate's dog hassled my poor cat into my room by licking his rear end, which stimulated my cat like a candy dispenser, and he defecated. I guess that was what the dog wanted because she promptly ate the feces. My poor cat was horrified. Same here. Story 17. In grade school, I ate a hot dog for lunch. I wasn't feeling well, so as I walked down the hallway to my class, I vomited hot dog pieces all over the hallway right next to a classroom with the door open. It was not a pretty sight. Story 18. I've already posted an answer, but reading the other comments stimulated a memory I had repressed. Here it is. Cuddled up with my cat, admiring his beauty. Lying in bed, our heads both on the pillow. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he vomited on my face. Hot cat vomit in my ear, eyes, and mouth. It burned my eyes. I heard it gurgle down into my ear canal. Then he got up and left me there, stunned and frozen. What a betrayal. Story 19. I worked at a dog daycare in my early 20s. We did not have a proper way to dispose of dog waste in the yard. So we filled a bucket with bleach and water and let the waste dissolve during the day before dumping the water into the drains. One time, a dog had a very solid stool. I went to drop it into the bucket while talking to someone with my mouth open. The bleach water with dissolved waste splashed up into my mouth and eye. I washed my eyes out and went home for the day. I did not get in trouble when the manager found out. Story 20. Practical lessons in retirement homes. I had to feed my client with bread soaked in a brown liquid. I thought I was going to throw up watching her chew. Changing diapers was also difficult. Cleaning an elderly man's skin covered in feces. Stepping on feces. Getting urine on my hand. Washing the hands of a woman who had feces under her nails while she claimed it was chocolate. Washing feet with yellow nails, dry heels, bed sores, and rotting wounds under bandages. Checking the temperature of a woman breathing through a tracheostomy. Sleeping with open eyes and mouth. And seeing an actual corpse. Story 21. A patient threw an entire bottle of their vomited bile, which smells much worse than actual vomit and stains badly, and broke their catheter all over my face while I was a student nurse on a night shift once. Another patient was finger painting on the walls with their feces. I was not even getting paid to deal with that at the time. At least I get paid now for it. Story 22. I have been through some difficult situations and never gagged until my cat swallowed a string. I had to pull it out of this small creature, feeling like one of those clowns pulling a long handkerchief out of their mouths. It was wet and unpleasant. Why did he do that? Story 23. I fell asleep on the couch with my mother, her head on one end, mine on the other, and my legs behind hers, bent against her bottom. I woke up feeling something wet and gooey on my legs. Then the stench hit me. I got up to look, and my mother had defecated all over my legs in her sleep. I vomited as soon as I realized what had happened. The worst part is, my mother still brings it up to try to embarrass me. She presents it as a quirky or funny anecdote, while I genuinely feel traumatized by it. Story 24. I can't top what I've read so far. I'm so sorry for you all. I caught a salmon. Walking from the boat onto the dock, seagulls were everywhere, waiting for the guts. Seagull droppings landed all over my head. A big squirt went into my mouth. It's been years. I'm normally a live and let live kind of guy, but I haven't been able to forgive the species for that. Story 25. Had my child on my shoulders as a toddler at the zoo. She had a stream of diarrhea that ran down the back of my shirt and into my pants. A few minutes later, I was in the restroom cleaning someone else's mess for myself. It was unpleasant, especially on a hot day. My child is 22 now, and I am keeping this story ready for their potential wedding day. Story 26. One time I went outside to take the trash to the dumpster. I was wearing thin sneakers from Puma that let you feel everything. Suddenly, the top of my foot felt hot. When I looked down, it was a large rat just lying on my foot. From that night until I left, my ex was the one who had to take the trash out. The best part is that I have always been terrified of rats. Story 27. I sat on the toilet in a public washroom. I only do this in an emergency. I sat down quickly because it was a dire situation. Then I noticed some red stuff on my penis. I found some blood, presumably from someone's menstrual period, between the seat and the bowl at the front. My penis got some on it. I quickly went home and showered because I was very disgusted. Story 28. My dental filling got dislodged, and some food entered the gap and rotted, causing a foul taste in my mouth. Fortunately, I managed to book a root canal on short notice, but it was a very uncomfortable few days. Story 29. I had some type of fungal infection from either a hot tub or the ocean, and my penis was peeling. I am talking massive strips for weeks. I was too embarrassed to tell my parents, but that was some serious-looking fungus. Story 30. I was giving my sons, ages 2 and 4, a bath and sitting on the edge of the tub with my feet in the water. My youngest had diarrhea, and while I was scooping the boys out of the tub, my oldest vomited on me. As I was setting him down, I slipped into the tub, which now had both vomit and feces swirling in it. I then vomited as well. Story 31. My ex. We had just moved in together and started to fool around. He dropped his pants and the entire room immediately smelled like feces. A lot of feces. And not fresh feces. It was that sharp, rancid cheese smell that dog feces get when it has been baking in the sun for several hours. I asked him what the smell was, figuring he had passed gas, and he just started giggling and said, "Poop." I asked him to explain what he meant by poop, and he told me, "It's just the poo piece that gets stuck in his butt hairs." Turns out that he thought you only need one swipe of the toilet paper when wiping, even if it comes away dirty. He was only wiping properly when I was visiting. Since we had moved in together and I was now trapped in a year-long lease with him, he thought it would make it too difficult for me to break up with him, so he had stopped wiping properly. I, being a normal, decent human being who does not enjoy sitting in my own feces, took several minutes to process this information and just sat there. He took this as a sign that I accepted his nastiness, so he continued trying to make out with me. I ended up having to slap him across the face because he would not get off me or stop trying to stick his tongue in my mouth, even though I was totally unresponsive, which is disgusting and disturbing on a whole other level. I mean, who keeps trying to have sex with someone who is clearly no longer interested? To make things even worse, while I was scrubbing my gums bloody with my toothbrush and scrubbing my body anywhere he had touched me to wash every trace of his nastiness off of me, he sat in the bedroom giggling like a toddler while repeating poop and but hairs to himself. We never had sex or fooled around again. He never understood the point, even when I explained it directly. The only people who do not wipe their anus properly are babies and toddlers, and I do not engage with children that way. He is now married to a woman 25 years older than him, and I cannot help but wonder if she plays mommy and wipes his anus. Story 32. I was sexually assaulted by a friend while blacked out. I only remember flashes of it. Before anyone asks, I was far beyond just being a little drunk. There were drugs involved, and I was heavily sedated. I have become sober, and this experience was a major reason for that change. However, it also contributed to unhealthy coping habits for a long time before I got sober. Story 33. For context, I am Asian and we have yogurt with our meals now and then. I was eating, and as I dug into the yogurt, I found a dead cockroach in it. This happened more than 30 years ago, but it still haunts me. I hate cockroaches with a passion. Story 34. I live in Australia. It was the middle of summer, the perfect time to hang out some towels. Well, my cat left me a crunchy gift under the clothesline. I stood on it. It made an audible crunch and oozed between my toes. Story 35. New Year's Eve. Las Vegas, on public transportation on my way home from the fireworks. 1:15 a.m. Sitting there minding my own business, in a good mood. A 6 or 7-year-old girl sitting in the seat next to me with her dad. 3 seats across the bendy part of a 2-part expanded bus. The girl turns to look at me and projectile vomits without warning all over my shirt and face. Dad is clearly mortified and extremely apologetic. The bus driver pulls over and throws me off the bus because I smelled of vomit. I walked home. It was 37 degrees outside that night. Story 36. During the birth of one of my children, my wife had a strong contraction and unintentionally sprayed the whole room with feces. Myself, the doctor, a nurse, and a trainee nurse were at the center of the situation. Story 37. Accidentally took a sip of dip spit and threw it up in my trash can. Almost hit my friend for leaving that around. I am visually impaired. Please be careful. Story 38. My dog got into the litter box and had a couple of cat treats. He then vomited on the couch. The other dog started licking it, and my husband, who is very averse to vomit, walked in and also vomited everywhere. It was like the whole event unfolded in slow motion. Story 39. I made a milkshake. I accidentally drank a dead baby gecko that somehow made its way into the cup. Story 40. When I was in high school, I worked at a dog kennel. One day, while I was taking the dogs out for a walk, a Great Dane puppy jumped up, and his dirty foot hit me in the mouth. Ooh, so gross. Overall, working with the dogs was okay, but that place was problematic. One of the owners was significantly overweight, even though he was a vegetarian. I guess when your diet consists of cheese pizza and Diet Mountain Dew, you're probably not going to be the healthiest person. He would sit in the front office with his private parts exposed through tiny shorts. He was having a sexual relationship with the other owner, who was married. She ended up pregnant, and when I saw them later at a restaurant, the baby was the spitting image of the guy. The woman told me that she had gone home and had sex with her husband right away too, but apparently the guy's DNA won out. Mind you, I was a minor at the time, and obviously that was not an appropriate office topic. Once I turned 18, he targeted me as well. I had zero self-esteem due to my mother's constant belittling and basically let anyone who gave me attention do whatever they wanted. I had my first orgasm from oral sex, sitting in the front office in a desk chair. It was after hours, but we were not the only ones there, and the office was not fully enclosed. I have to give him credit. He knew what he was doing. He tried to have sex with me in his bed. He lived in a house on the property, and the sheets smelled unpleasant. Thankfully, that did not happen. I don't remember why. He was 35, if I remember correctly. At least at that point, I was no longer a virgin. I had lost it to a guy I did not know who had randomly come up to me in biology class and told me he loved me. When he kissed me, I felt disgusted, and when he penetrated me, I only felt relief that I was no longer a virgin. After all, I was getting too old to still be a virgin. At least, that's what I had always heard. I felt absolutely nothing for him, and we had no real relationship. When I spent time with him, it was strange and awkward. He often smelled like body odor. I don't remember how that relationship ended. I was just relieved that it did. I know that doesn't necessarily apply to this post, but there you go. I suppose that whole experience was pretty disgusting, so maybe it does apply. Story 41. Spotify removed half of my music catalog because one song was flagged for having 300 artificial streams. I am confident that many popular artists have more artificial streams than I do, yet their music is not removed. It is out of your control which playlists your fans add your songs to, and this could happen to anyone without their consent. That was very disappointing to me. I am frustrated with Spotify. Story 42. I was working from my house as a graphic designer. I delivered some artwork to my client and discovered I had stepped in dog feces on the way. She said, "I smell feces." I took one look at my shoe and went straight to the bathroom. Luckily, the client in this story was one of my best friends. Story 43. I posted this on a different thread just last night and will include it here too as it is truly foul. It is not mine, but I have a truly gag-inducing story belonging to a friend of mine. He did a summer job working with the fallen stock collector, also known as the knacker, when he left school. One day, they had to go and pick up a sheep which had been lying dead for several hot midsummer days, and which the farmer had left in the middle of the yard. The older man who my friend worked with, and who was the driver of the van, could not be bothered to unclasp the catches on the tailgate and suggested that since it was just one sheep, they would just swing it up and over the tailgate between them. My friend said he was not too keen as the sheep was bloated at least twice its normal size by this point, but the older man insisted it would be fine. Well, what happened was that as they swung the sheep's carcass up and over the tailgate, the sheep's bloated stomach caught the little pillar sticking up at the edge of the tailgate and it spectacularly burst. My friend was holding the back end nearest the guts, and the whole lot came down on top of him, in his hair, clothes, eyes, nostrils, and mouth. Fluids, guts, the lot, from this sheep which had been dead in the midsummer sun for half a week. He said he has never smelled anything like it, and when he told me the story, which happened about 35 years ago, he was gagging, saying, "I can still taste it." Story 44. I was so intoxicated that I was unable to move when it happened. It was inevitable. The morning after, I woke up drenched in my own vomit. I felt the urge the night before. I simply didn't have the strength or control to do anything about it. Story 45. I vomited in the car when I found out I was pregnant. I continued driving and hoped it did not get on the car. Morning sickness was terrible. Story 46. Housekeeping in a retirement home. We were not supposed to deal with resident bowel movements. That was the certified nursing assistant's job. One woman was preparing for her colonoscopy and barely made it to the bathroom. There was a trail of feces from her recliner down the hall to her bathroom, on the bathroom walls, and all over the floor. It was an explosion. The supervisor told us to clean it up. I gagged the whole time. The woman made it back to her chair and was sleeping in the mess. Story 47. My dad was dying of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. His systems were slowing quickly. He would be in the bathroom many times, and often he would fall between the toilet and the wall. I would be screaming at my mom. She was doing other things and then walked over to the bathroom with no urgency at all. He was wedged and could not get himself up or out on his own. This happened all day long. Right before he passed away, Mom wanted me to video call my dad. He had already been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. That is part of my post-traumatic stress disorder. He was sitting in the hospital bed that had a bar hanging over it. My mom asked if I wanted to see him. I did not because I knew it would be bad at this point. She showed me on the video call anyway. My dad looked nothing like himself. His body was skeletal. He didn't even know who I was, and he was swinging on the bar. They lived in Arizona, and we lived in Montana. My mom called late one night to tell me that my dad had passed away. Is my mom a psycho or what? Story 48. The end of my hair, which was in a long ponytail, dipped into a dish of contaminated water that my colleague created while cleaning a resident who was incontinent. At that time, we did not follow best practices. This happened at my old job in aged care. I was mortified and scrubbed my hair thoroughly in the hand wash basin using all the antiseptic hand soaps I could find. I damaged it so badly that I had to cut about 3 inches off my hair. Story 49. I was drunk at a party and took a sip of what I thought was my beer, but it was actually someone's ashtray. Story 50. Got urinated on in kindergarten. We used to play a game called touchdown football. Both kids would stand at either end of the urinal trough and try to urinate all the way to the other end. One kid, Troy, must have had a lot of Kool-Aid because he not only reached the other end but urinated so far it soaked my shirt. I don't remember how we explained it to the teacher. Story 51. I had a stomach infection a couple of months ago, and my stool was all liquid. It was not even diarrhea, just straight up brown water. The worst part was that I was not able to control my bowel movements, so I would unexpectedly have accidents. It was the worst week of my life. Story 52. Former general contractor. Definitely the time I had to climb into a septic tank and remove about 1 ton of asphalt chunks by hand. The top layer, 99% of the infill, was fine. It was the final 1% resting in a couple of inches of waste that set me over the edge. Little granular bits of every kind of brown waste known to man from over 50 years of not being emptied. No one knew the tank was there, and it had not been serviced in decades. It was in the middle of the city, and there was a sewer line in the street that was never tied in. The homeowners had no idea the overflow was draining into a ditch 100 yards away. Little splashy brown bits all over me. Then it started to rain. I was basically a human turd playing in a kiddie pool made for human turds. I did not puke, but I did throw away my boots, pants, and socks, and bleach out my truck when I got home. Then I spent the rest of the day on the couch staring at the wall, wondering how to get out of that life. In case you are wondering, when you decommission a septic tank, you have to backfill it with stable material that will not shift or sink over time. That is gravel. My earthwork guy said he could fill it with asphalt he tore up from another job, but then the inspector said that was not a stable material. Then the earthwork guy said he did not have a machine that extracted asphalt chunks from a waste tank and refused to clear out the tank. So I did it. Lesson learned. Story 53. I had an accident at East Croydon Station. I thought it was a fart, but it wasn't. There was a large amount of really unpleasant feces in my boxers. I cleaned myself up as much as possible. I managed to get a train close to my house, but still had to take a bus. The bus was crowded on a very hot day, and it was obvious to everyone that I smelled of human waste. Story 54. No unpleasant matters to mention, only that I am currently on a water fast, very hungry, and this thread is the best thing ever. Story 55. I'm a musician and used to host open mic nights weekly for about 7 years. One night, while closing out the show, I was performing a cover song that required a rapid inhale to emulate the sound of hitting a joint. The technique is to make an ooh sound with your lips and give a sharp pull while making contact with the microphone. When I did this, my mouth was immediately flooded with the saliva of everyone who had performed that night, at least a dozen other singers. I wanted to vomit, but I held it together and finished the song. I learned my lesson that night. I continued to host for a couple more years, but now I strictly play in my own band and don't let anyone touch my equipment. Aside from this disgusting experience, you wouldn't believe how little regard people have for your equipment. They will abuse everything you own, and replacing gear regularly costs way more money than you make hosting. Never again. Story 56. I was scooping my cat's litter box when the scoop got stuck under a pile of wet sand. The scoop catapulted cat urine, litter, and a cat feces into my face and mouth. Story 57. I sat in a large pile of dog waste, and there were no bathrooms nearby to wash myself. The nearest one was a 10-minute walk away. I was crying, covered in waste, and people were staring. The day was ruined. Story 58. First day in residential rehabilitation treatment at age 16. They took my bag of clothes and belongings for inspection. I ate some vegetable burgers with the other residents, and we were taken to another room to do yoga afterward. I was in the downward dog position and started feeling nauseous. Before I knew it, I was vomiting in the trash can and got vomit all over my shirt. The worst part was that the staff said they couldn't give me any of my clothes or other belongings back until the manager had gone through all of it. So I was forced to sleep in clothes with my own vomit on them, and understandably, nobody wanted to share a room with me. I'm so glad I'm past that. Story 59. I was driving bumper cars when I hit the side of the track, flew out of the car, and landed in a pile of what had to be the biggest dog poop I have ever seen. Story 60. I went into a work bathroom stall and saw that someone had left a banana peel on top of the toilet paper dispenser, as if they ate a banana while using the toilet. Imagine it. Story 61. My ex told her family about our intimate relationship, and for some reason her family, known in the sport I am involved in for being generally unreasonable, blamed me for manipulating her into pregnancy when she was not even pregnant. It made no sense. Story 62. Stepped into human waste covered in sand on a beach. Completely ruined the mood, so I had to go home. Story 63. Touched by my mother. Not like that, just pinched and scratched. Tiny things, but it is so constant I think I actually have post-traumatic stress disorder. Story 64. I was stabbed with one of those things used for drawing circles, and I developed a black crusty area on my side. It hurt a lot, but soon fell off. Story 65. Once I was going to the bathroom, and while washing my hands, I looked in the mirror and noticed two big beetles the size of my pinky finger on my shoulders. I became very startled. Story 66. Working maintenance at a large public place. I was coming from the boiler room up in the freight elevator. It was an old-type elevator with a screen, manual gates, and so on. Water was dripping down the shaft from above, and of course, as a maintenance worker, I had to find the leak and stop it. I looked up the shaft. It dripped in my face multiple times. Finally, I got up several floors and found the source. Someone had urinated by the elevator door, and it was going down the shaft. I made a beeline to the locker room, showered, and changed my uniform. As a maintenance worker, snaking out sewer lines was normal, and seeing brown trout float by was common, but this was in the face. Story 67. I was at my friend's restaurant, and he left a glass of wine on the bar. I thought it was his, so I drank some. It turns out they had just finished a wine sampling, and the glass was the spit cup for 3 people. Story 68. I was 5 or 6 years old, home alone for the evening because my parents had an event. They had bought me a packet of food for dinner that contained spicy sambal chili. I was sitting on the floor using a small child-sized stool as my dining table, watching TV and eating. Halfway through the meal, my parents arrived home. I went to the door and opened it for them, then returned to my food. With my eyes fixed on the TV, I grabbed the spoon and put it in my mouth. I noticed there was still a bit of chili on the spoon, so I figured I would lick it clean before the next mouthful. My mouth started buzzing and the taste was strange and chemical-like. I stuck my tongue out and began scraping with my fingers. It was not chili. During the few seconds it took me to open the door, dozens of tiny ants had crawled onto the spoon. This was my first experience with spicy ants. Story 69. My husband worked on a construction site doing long hours as an electrician. On my day off, I decided to surprise him by bringing him lunch at work. However, on my way to the job site, a sewage pipe burst above me, and I was suddenly covered from head to toe in sewage. I had to go to the hospital to get hepatitis A and tetanus injections. When I got home, I sat in the shower for 2 hours and threw up just thinking about the day's events. I am still nauseous now typing this out, even though it happened 7 years ago. Story 70. My cat received anesthesia and medication because he had some crystals built up in his urinary tract. When we got home, he slowly woke up and sprinted to the litter box, still half knocked out. Poor guy basically exploded all over the place, and I barely managed to grab his tail and hold it up just enough to prevent him from soiling his entire fluffiness. My ex-husband just stood there and almost vomited all over the place as well. Another time, when I was an assistant at a dental office, I had to clean out the saliva, blood, and pus bucket. Also, my ex-boyfriend, who was basically sick non-stop, wanted to kiss me while his nose was dripping directly into my mouth. Story 71. Once my parents drove home from the country house, and their dog threw up a few cute little baby mice right in the car. That was how we discovered the dog had eaten them. My father was hysterical. Story 72. Drinking a can of soda on a hot summer day, I did not realize a wasp had entered the can without my knowing. I only realized when it went into my mouth. Story 73. At my old house, roaches were common and very hard to get rid of. While enjoying a bowl of frosted flakes, I felt something strange between my chews. Perhaps it was an accident on the factory line, and I got a weird cereal piece. I opened my mouth to spit it back into the bowl, and a fully grown roach was swimming around in the milky, sugary liquid. After that, I never trusted cereal again at that house. Story 74. I was popping cherry tomatoes into my mouth like candy when one of them happened to be rotten. I had been eating them quickly, biting then swallowing almost in one movement. The liquid inside was thick and even warm somehow. It was too late. I couldn't stop myself from swallowing it. I didn't eat cherry tomatoes for over a year. I have never tasted anything like it. Story 75. I worked in a large office with 200 people, and there were very large central bathrooms. One night I went to the bathroom, and when I pulled the toilet paper, a dirty tampon fell into my hand. Someone had removed it from their body, unrolled the toilet paper, put the tampon in, and rolled it back up so the tampon was not visible. Took my brain a long time to process. Story 76. I am gagging as I type this. In college, I had a horrible chest cough, and I coughed up a large amount of mucus to fill my entire palm. Then I vomited and had to clean up both messes. Story 77. I was going somewhere between classes in middle school and was turning a corner when my friend happened to vomit right around that corner in the middle of the doorway. I slipped, fell, hit my head, and ruined my ugly UGG shoes. I gagged as I tried to wash those shoes in the bathroom sink to the best of my ability, but they were never the same. Story 78. I got sick from a hotel room that smelled like vomit on a 2-day road trip. I remember sprinting to a gas station bathroom, grabbing a trash can full of sanitary pads, and vomiting heavily while simultaneously experiencing diarrhea. Story 79. I was in the shower of my apartment and closed my eyes while washing my hair when a large cockroach fell into my mouth from a hole in the ceiling. When I opened my eyes, I instantly screamed loudly. Story 80. Went down a slide as a 9-year-old on a day out with my dad. Someone had thrown dog feces down it. It was an enclosed slide tunnel and it went all over my leg. Story 81. My cat defecated at the bottom of my chair. I thought the feces were dry, so I tried to kick it away, but it was wet, and I got wet cat feces all over my foot. I rushed to the bathroom and wiped it off while trying not to gag from the smell. Story 82. I was walking to work in my late teens when a homeless person spat out of a passenger window, and it hit me square on the cheek. I wiped what I could and scrubbed my cheek red raw at work. As someone who is very concerned about germs, I was extremely rattled and received a reprimand for taking too long to start work. Story 83. For some reason, my mom decided it was a good idea to let my young toddler daughter eat a whole pint of blueberries while babysitting her. This resulted in the most violent and foul-smelling diarrhea I have ever experienced in my life. First, she had a blowout diaper in the car on the way home. It got all over the car seat, the car seats, and even the headliner. Then, while trying to get her cleaned up and changed at home, she had another bout and coated me, herself, the walls, and the carpet in toxic stool. Cleanup took the rest of the day, with gagging and retching the entire time. All materials from cleanup went straight to the trash outside inside a sealed garage bag, but we could literally smell the trash can from inside the house. Even though my daughter does not remember it at all, she has never touched a blueberry since that day. Story 84, Corner Bar. I was turning the corner to go in. A man was standing outside smoking. Just as I turned the corner, he spit his cigarette spit directly into my open mouth. Story 85. My husband and I were managing an apartment complex. One tenant had a problem with roaches. Every summer, they would go to Pakistan to visit family for a couple of months. We would occasionally check their apartment while they were gone. One time, when I opened the front door, a waterfall of cockroaches fell on me. I wish I had a video of the screaming and jumping freak I must have looked like. I have never been so grossed out in my life. I swear I felt those things crawling on me for days. Story 86. Lost 3 aquarium fish, only to find them decomposing in the weir. I had to dig them out in winter while the aquarium heaters were on. This all happened while I was high during a 3-day cocaine binge. The fish had been decomposing for 3 weeks. I had been wondering where the slick layer of oil building on the surface of the water was. Each fish was the size of a small dinner plate. Story 87. I volunteered to clean out the van and crates for the animal rescue I foster for. Every week, we pick up 30 to 50 animals who are often sick, so everything needs to be cleaned before the next transport. I went to a self-serve car wash and did not anticipate the spray to be so forceful. It sprayed back at me and into my mouth, water mixed with puppy diarrhea containing worms. Story 88. I opened a door and discovered a metal ladder leaning against it. I did not have time to react before there was blood everywhere and my head was split open. Fun times. Story 89. Graphic post-warning. I was alone with my older brother. I have to take care of him because he is mentally impaired. One day he walked to the shower, and while he was showering, he soiled himself all over the bathroom. It smelled so bad I wanted to vomit. He is overweight and very tall, which means he produced a large amount. I have never seen anything like that. The chunks were so big they clogged the shower. I immediately cleaned my brother, sent him to bed, got a broom, and there were so many chunks that they barely fit in the dustpan. The room was very small, meaning there was no escape from the smell. It was not over, because before I finished cleaning the bathroom, it started smelling bad again. Yes, my brother soiled himself again in the bed. For some reason, it smelled worse. I sent my brother to the shower and cleaned the sheets. Guess what happened? He soiled himself in the shower again, so it was the smell from the shower and the bed. I could not breathe and wanted to vomit. I told my brother to sit in the bathroom because clearly he was not done. When he finished, I cleaned him again, put clean shorts on him, and sent him to bed where he soiled himself again. I am skipping some details, but he soiled himself about 5 times, and I had to clean everything. It lasted about 1 hour and remains to this day the most disgusting experience I have ever had, and it is not even close. I was happy my brother was okay after all. Story 90. My sister just got out of the hospital after 3 months due to a stroke. She couldn't talk, lost the ability to move her right hand, and had trouble walking, so she needed full-time care. One morning, while walking my dog, I came back and noticed a trail of feces from her bedroom to the hallway and all the way to my brother's room. She had feces leaking from her diaper and all over her back. The sheets were soiled, and my brother said she had gotten feces on some items he had lying on the floor. The reason she couldn't call for us was that her bell had broken. We disinfected both rooms and the hallway with bleach. Although the smell wasn't too bad since she was consuming only milk, the image is engraved forever in my mind. Story 91. This one is probably mild compared to the other horrible things I have read in this thread. I once had a bigger boil right above my cleavage. It hurt a lot, and I was relieved when it was ripe enough to pop. The first thing that came out was some yellow fluid, but after the second push, it became disgusting. The yellow substance was no longer fluid. It was a dry, yellow, rope-like thin material that left my body. It smelled like amoxicillin. Story 92. One time, I dropped my phone in the toilet after I used it and had to retrieve it. Another time, on a boat, I had a bowel movement larger than the drain pipe in the marine head, and I had to retrieve it. When I worked at a horse stable as a teenager, my friends threw me into the manure pile because they thought it was a funny prank. One time, my ex-boyfriend mailed me a glitter bomb for my birthday because he was angry that I ended the relationship. The worst experience was when I worked in an arcade, and some child pulled the soap dispensers off the walls in both bathrooms. After cleaning most of the soap, water needed to be added to break down the residue. I spent hours trying to get rid of the bubbles. Story 93. Ate pistachios in the dark while watching a movie. After the movie, I turned the lights on and the bag was infested with pistachio bugs. I have never eaten them again. It has been about 7 years. Story 94. My first college roommate urinated on the floor of our room in the middle of the night during our first weekend there. Story 95. When I was 17, my best friend convinced me to date her boyfriend's 19-year-old best friend. One day, she invited them over to her house. We had had boys over before, and they always slept in her closet. This time, though, she wanted to be alone with her boyfriend. She had her brother sleep in the living room, and I took his room. I made my boyfriend a pallet in his closet. She said if her dad asked why her door was locked, I should say we got in a fight. I was very naive. When he put a dresser in front of the door and said, "That way, if her dad checks, it seems like you're really upset too, and won't make you go back into her room and catch them," we played video games for a while. Then I wanted to go to sleep. He didn't walk into the closet, but walked over to the bed with me. I told him I made him a bed in the closet. He did not care about that bed. I told him to stop and kept pushing his hands off me until I couldn't fight anymore. I lay there dissociating, looking out of a broken blind at the trees. I was a virgin, and he stole my virginity while I was wearing powder blue Care Bear pajama shorts. The next morning, when I went into the living room, she and her boyfriend were already there, and I walked out covered in blood. I called my youth pastor to take me home. No one asked me what happened or if I was okay. I felt like it was obvious to everyone what happened to me. Instead, I was made to go to an extra Bible study class, hang out with the pastor's wife, and I was rebaptized after I finished the course. I stopped hanging out with my friends. When my boyfriend called me and said he would kill himself if I wouldn't talk to him, I told him to do it. Everyone around me thought I was mean. I was called a bad person, and nothing ever happened to him. Story 96. I had untreated pneumonia and gastroenteritis in boot camp and woke up on the floor of the quarantine bay in a puddle of my own diarrhea. Story 97. We had a male patient who needed a catheter placed because he was unable to urinate. Both my charge nurse and I attempted to place it but were unsuccessful. We even tried a Coude catheter, which has a curved tip to help navigate around blockages or obstructions in the urethra, but had no luck. We called the urology team and the doctor came to place it. I was assisting, and when the doctor was threading the catheter with great force, he finally got past whatever was in the way, and urine and blood shot out of the end of the catheter and into my face, including my eyes. It was the first time I had to be tested for all potential bloodborne pathogens. I also had to flush my eyes with saline for about an hour. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.